Thank you everyone for showing up tonight. I know it is late on a Wednesday and I appreciate that. What we're going to do tonight is we're going to go over Google's pending SSL change, and we're going to talk about what that means for trust on your website and what it means for us in terms of SEO. So thank you for your patience. This is a new system. We used to use GoToWebinar. This is Webinar Jam. There are a bunch of other features that I like about it. So if any of you are doing any webinars for your office or considering it, let me know, and I'll be happy to discuss this with you. Only because there are a bunch of ways to do it, and this one, it can actually do it through Facebook Live as well. So, okay, so let's get rolling here. Let me just find my thing. Okay, so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. David Wank. I'm a practicing general dentist in New York City, and I'm the president of Short Hills Design, which is an internet marketing firm for dentists and physicians. And we have some attorneys too, but we won't talk about attorneys. Here's my contact information. I will post this at the end, so you have it. All right, so tonight it's be about a half hour, 35 minutes maybe. So, okay, so we're going to talk about an introduction. Then we're going to talk briefly about the web design workbook for dentists and the internet marketing workflow and where in the workflow all this fits. Because it's just important to understand where in space and time we are when it comes to doing what we're doing. So then we're going to talk briefly about what is SSL. It is not going to be technical. It's just I want you to understand what it is. You don't have to understand the why. Then we're going to talk about what Google is doing because, again, we do have to understand, even though we have to do what they say, it's still important to actually, understand why they're doing it. Then I want to talk about SSL and SEO. I'm then going to talk about trust. We're briefly going to talk about SSL certificates and costs and my current recommendations, and then we'll wrap it up and open it up for questions. Now, technical level is 0. When it comes to installing an SSL certificate, it is something that you are going to have to usually have help for. And those of you who know me know that I am all about having you do your own thing and doing your own whatever. I have no problem with that. But this can get messy, so it's important that you have someone who knows what they're doing. Do it. If you have questions, just ask. Again, this is a new system for us, so there should be a chat section for you where you can ask a question, and then I will see it. I have Kimberly from my team here helping me work the control room. Yeah, they call it a control room. So if there are questions and I don't see them, I will know about them, but certainly we're going to keep an eye for those if there are questions. If they are something that would be helpful at the moment, I'll answer them. Otherwise, we'll answer them at the end. And again, I will stay on after to take any other questions. So taking notes, if you want a copy of the slides, feel free to email me. What you're going to see on the side, you should have a sidebar that shows file sharing. I've got a migration checklist there for you. You can actually download that file now. It's a PDF that kind of, if you wanted to hand something to your web developer and say, hey, I was at this webinar and here's what we have to do, you can give them that checklist. In the follow-up email that I'm going to send after the webinar, I think you get it about a day later, it will have the recording because we have to process it. It'll also have a link to the file. So, all right. Now, the web design workbook for dentists. So those of you who have heard about the book know that it is a non-technical guide for dentists and team members. It's not a book about how to do your own website. Certainly you can if you want. I don't want to wax up my own RPD frames. So, but you could. And it's really what you need to know before you go ahead and spend money. So the workbook used to be for sale. It's now free. If you go to our Facebook group, and there's a link, I can get you guys a link to that. If you go to, actually, let me put the link here in the chat window so everyone can see it. It is shorthillsdesign.com/FB group. You can actually go there and join the group if you haven't already. So what we're going to do is there's chapter 2 and chapter 3 of the first version of the book are in there. So you can download those and look at them. But I want to say maybe by quarter 3, we're going to have, or maybe even quarter 4, I'm going to have the full book rewritten and it will be available for free, most likely as an email series with the book. But in the meantime, you can feel free to click this link and sign up to join the Facebook group where you can get that. All right, so moving ahead, the web design workflow. With SSL and patient trust, that really has to do with phase 1, which is building your website. And that, again, is just like building your office. You build it out, you have electricity, you have power, and that's what you do. After that, we move to phase 2, which is driving traffic. And you drive traffic, whether it's search engine optimization, social media, pay-per-click, anything you do. That's where SEO lives. So I just want people to understand, like denture. Phase 1 is an impression, phase 2 is border mold, and such. And in dental school, I didn't understand, why am I border molding and how's that going to have an effect on the final denture? So I have this here so you can see in space where these things all fit in. So tonight is basically, this really is under your website development and setup. And then the SEO portion is once you're driving traffic there. Once you have your office and you have, again, plumbing and employees, then you can start sending patients. You don't want to send patients to an office with no electricity, and you certainly don't want to send patients to a website that isn't ready. So moving forward. So what is SSL? So SSL stands for Secure Socket Layer, which you don't have to know. Now, basically, so we know the computers on the internet talk to each other. You have to log on here tonight, and your desktop computer or your phone or your tablet, whatever device you're using, has to talk to this computer that's running this webinar. Now, the default is unencrypted, and that means it's open. So that means you are on the train, and you are having a conversation with someone next to you on the train, and anyone can listen in and hear what you're saying. And generally speaking, that's fine. When you're visiting a news website or you're doing whatever you're doing, looking up a sports score, that's totally fine. Even browsing a store to see what products they offer. We needed SSL because what happens when you actually want to buy something? So if you're browsing on a clothing website and you're looking to buy a shirt, it doesn't need to be SSL secured or encrypted while you are browsing the shirt. But once you say to this company, or whichever it may be, you want to buy a shirt, now you've got to log in, you've got to give personal information, including your credit card number, any passwords, or if it's online banking, they might want to verify with your social or account numbers and other information. So they said, we need a way, though, to make this secure, because I'm certainly not going to tell you in the train, sitting next to me in the train, what my credit card number is. I'm not going to say that out loud. So we needed an encrypted way to say, hey, how can my computer tell your computer that this is the credit card number, but only our computers can know? And that's really what SSL is. And you'll see it, you'll recognize it, because you'll see here this little padlock icon. So here's eBay that shows secure. This is Safari with Amazon. Sometimes it just shows the padlock. And this might be Firefox, I don't recall. But you can see here there's also variation of the padlock. And we have been trained as web users that if you don't see the padlock, don't enter your social, don't enter something. In fact, this is years ago when I was looking for a job as a dentist. I met someone at one, the New York show, whatever it was, and they wanted me to go to this website where I could sign up to be a temporary dentist somewhere. And they asked for your social, and it wasn't secure. And I was like, are you kidding me? And there's no way I'm entering my social on a website that's not SSL, encrypted or SSL secured. So that's why. And that's what SSL is. And so how do you do it? How do you make it so that my computer here on the left in this example, this laptop, it talks to this server. By the way, this big black box is usually the symbol that we say for a server or a web server. And this little gray cylinder next to it, that is a database. Just so there's some, it's more useless information about stuff that you don't need to know, but there you go. But the idea here is that your computer is talking to this server, this database. Let's say it's the bank, and you see the arrows go back and forth. That's an encrypted conversation. Now, and how do you do it? You do it by setting up what's called an SSL certificate. Now, and what is that? So an SSL certificate is just computer code that lets websites have an encrypted conversation with each other. That's all that it is. And someone who knows what they're doing, your web developer, would install that for you, or your hosting company. Now, what is Google doing? So Google has said that as of July, I don't know why these dots are here, I'm sorry about that. As of July, Google's going to start labeling sites that don't have the SSL certificate as not secure. In the past, it might not have mentioned it. It might have kind of glossed over it. But now it's going to give you this big warning. Here's an example that says not secure. And so why does it matter? Well, it matters for two real reasons, having the SSL certificate. One is trust, and two is SEO, meaning how your pages rank on search engines. And so that's why this matters. This is a trust issue, and it's also an SEO issue. Now, so what's Google doing? And this is my editorial position here. I think it's absurd that Google is making us all do SSL. we are, whether, there are dentists on here, I know we have some attorneys and some physicians registered. What I will tell you is, personally, if we're going to browse your website and see that you are a dermatologist and you offer Botox services, or if you're a dentist and you offer Botox, or you're an attorney and you write wills, I don't really think that has to be SSL secured. I think it's unnecessary. There's no personal information being sent back and forth. Even on a contact form, what's my name? David Wank, what's my interest? I'm looking to get a will, and you comment, please contact me. I don't think it has to be secured. I'm not giving you anything that necessarily is personal. Now, that being said, if you happen to be doing e-commerce on your website as a health professional or an attorney, which I recommend you do not, or for dentists, for those of us that have, you have a link on your website and it goes to another website where they handle patient registration and that kind of thing, it's important to have that done where it's secure, and that's great because that's off your website, so you're not having a problem there. So when it comes to online patient registration, somebody just asked that, and this is actually an excellent question, and that's what this comes down to, because if you're going to do patient registration, you certainly would need SSL. But then you start getting into the HIPAA space, and that gets a little messy, which is why for that kind of thing, I would tell you, have an outside service do it. I know the Dentrix, for example, you have a link on your website that says patient portal, and you click it, and you're taken to a Dentrix portal where Dentrix manages that. Same thing with Care Credit. You have a link on your website to sign up for Care Credit. You certainly do not want to accept a patient credit application on your website. My goodness, there's so much regulatory red tape with that. So that's why usually when you click Care Credit, you've got Care Credit and you click the Care Credit thing, and then it takes you to a special site that's, drwank.carecredit.com. So Care Credit takes care of all of that. So again, if you have Dentrix, Dentrix does it too, but you want to offload it. Now, in the past, for example, it was very exciting if a client wanted to pay us online to have it done on the Short Hills Design website. And for that, you certainly needed SSL. These days, that's not so cool anymore, quote unquote. Anyone who's worked with me knows that I have a secure third party that I use for payments, and all of our clients, I don't have any clients who actually accept payments on their website per se. It says, please click here to access our secure portal. And so that, I think, is where this is going. And that being said, so that's why I don't think as a functional issue, you really need to have SSL. I mean, I think you functionally need to be mobile friendly. I agree with Google about that. I think that your website should load quickly. I agree with Google about that. But to have, small businesses for the most part have to have SSL, I really think it's a waste. That being said, we have to do it, so we're going to move forward. And this is actually where the trust issue comes in. So yeah, that's that. So let's talk about trust. So obviously, why do your patients trust you? Now, your patients trust you. Why? Because you have a white coat on, your reception desk is friendly, you don't send them surprise bills, I hope, the office is clean, they see sterilization bags. Your patients are not, I've never had a patient ask me to see the spore tests from the autoclave. They've said, hey, is that sterile? I say, of course, here's the bag it just came out of. But no one's ever asked me to see the spores. So if they really wanted to know, they'd ask to see the spore tests. And, we show them, no problem. But that's something that builds trust, because they can't look at our bite wings or our x-rays and say, hey, let me see a crown that you did 6 months ago and 6 years ago and look at the margins. They just can't do that. So that's why you have to have another way to make them trust you in your office. And that's what that is. So, if you wore an orange coat, it might freak people out just because they're not used to that. And you might say, I wear orange because it's better with the curing light or whatever it is, better for my eyes, but it's going to make people a little bit unsettled. So when you think about trust, I want you to think about a steakhouse versus fast food. And I like to say that, you'll go to Wolfgang's or you'll go to Morton's or any of these famous steakhouse, to Luger's, and you'll pay $70 for a steak. And I joke that the waiters there and the waitresses are wearing a suit that's more expensive than I wore, at my wedding. Now, does that necessarily mean that their meat, that their steak is any better than, Wendy's or McDonald's? And the truth is, I have no idea. But how do I know? I assume because they're wearing white gloves and a really expensive, nice jacket, that their food is good. And so because again, I guess I could go in the back and ask them, but it's not practical for me to compare somehow. I don't even know how I would compare their meat to McDonald's, obviously. So we have to use other cues for trust. So when it comes to your website, and this is what I've been saying, we've all been saying for years and years, is let's follow web standards so that way people see what they expect. I used to joke that when I was single, I would say as a single guy in the supermarket, I would much rather have things in alphabetical order, so that makes a lot more sense to me. But anyone else who would come into that supermarket would be stunned and would be uncomfortable because it's not like every other supermarket. You know, the marshmallows next to the Malamars next to the milk make sense to me, all the M's in one spot. But that's just not how, you know, the normal human population does it. So I would build my special supermarket though, but I would still follow standards. So why do your visitors trust you? Because, you know, you have a Facebook icon. And again, my favorite lecture is social media for dentists who hate social media. It's a pain, but it's what patients expect, and that's why we have to do it. Not because we enjoy it. I don't enjoy checking Facebook all the time, but again, it is, you know, where the business trend is going, and we either have to follow it or get, you know, sucked up and dumped on the side because we're not participating in that. And I was once heckled at a lecture when I said, if you don't have a Facebook icon, you must be a bad dentist. And he said to me, this participant, this dentist said, well, what do you know? You don't have the data. And I said, sir, the data doesn't matter. What matters is that patients don't have a good way of judging your clinical work. And so they mistakenly assume that if you have a Facebook icon, that must mean you know what you're doing. So you might have great veneers or horrible veneers and a Facebook icon, but patients are looking for ways to reassure themselves that you're probably pretty good. And that's why you have click to call. When you click on your iPhone or your smartphone or whatever you have, you can call the office. You have a contact form that they can use. And you have responsive design, which is a picture of that here, where you can see no matter what the device is, your website looks similar, looks the same. Now, here's why I have a real problem with SSL and dental, medical, legal, any of those kind of websites. Because if a patient visits your website, it says, you know, whatever it happens to be, Smith Family Dental Care New York, and I don't know if that exists or not, I just made that up, and they see something that says not secure, it might scare them off. And as far as I'm concerned, that is flat out not fair. I think that's terrible because, you know, you've worked so hard to build a website and to generate trust. And if they see not secure, it might cause them to go somewhere else. And it's really, I think it's very misleading. They talk about, you know, well, you want to sign up for, you know, like a free credit report and you click here and it's misleading because people don't read the thing that says, well, you're going to be charged. What's misleading here is that, yeah, this would be not secure if I were asking you for your credit card, or if I were asking you to register at a not secure site. But we're not asking any of that. So when someone sees not secure, they might not know what that means. You know that patients assume and say the strangest things. I had a patient 2 weeks ago trying to explain to me why he has a tooth that has to come out. And there's a posting core in there that's holding on by a thread that we re-cement every whatever and very well document the tooth has to come out. He brought some kind of pin, a dowel or something in his wallet and handed it to me and said, just make the space wider and use this. So you all have stories like that. But my issue here is that when a patient is not secure, does that mean that they're going to think that your office is not secure? You know, does that mean they're going to think that just visiting your website is going to give them a virus, which is, you know, no. So I really, really have an issue with this because people don't understand that means, yeah, it's not secure if you're going to give your social, but it's perfectly fine to browse. That's like writing on an office, it's not safe unless it's an alarm system. Well, that doesn't mean it's not safe. How many towns still keep, you know, the doors unlocked in small towns? So writing not secure on that small town where there's no crime on everyone's door is really, you know, very, very misleading. And it's not true. But again, because I think you cannot take the risk that a patient's going to see this and think that either your office or your website or something aren't safe, that you need to have SSL. Now, let's talk about SEO. So SSL is a ranking factor. Let's discuss that in a moment. We're going to tell a little bit more about that. So again, here's what we said. So why does it matter? Because Google has said now, you know, we're going to start showing this not secure warning in July. Some people say September. People now say July again. Again, like I said, it shouldn't matter, but Google says it does. So we're going to. Now, ranking factors. So for 2 minutes. So to get your webpage to appear on a search. So if you search for, you know, expert dental website content, I think my website content page on Short Hills comes up second or third or something. There are more than 300 ranking factors. And as we've said for any of the other webinars, we know we have a very good idea of what the ranking factors are. And here's, for example, here's SSL. These are not to scale. I don't know about these being to scale or whatnot. But obviously your information architecture is important, and so is SSL, but so are your header tags, and alt tags are not important as your age, your domain, so yeah, et cetera, et cetera. But what's going on here is that your SSL, whether or not you have one, is a ranking factor. And what we don't know is what's the weight of these. Like, I know that, for example, if you don't have title tags, if your code isn't formatted properly, then you're going to have a problem. You're not going to rank well. Now, what happens though if you have everything in this column, but you're missing one thing on the right column, let's say on the right side of this diagram? I don't know, which is why we tell everybody, go ahead and do everything you can to make sure that you've addressed all the ranking factors, which I like to call it a Google ready website, a website built to Google standards. And again, that is because I don't know what your competition is going to do. I don't know whether page speed or responsive design is going to change as a ranking factor, but I do know that it's in there. So I can't go back and see why did that tooth need endo. Well, it's pretty, it's really, really close to the pole porn, but then again, there might be a little bit of recurrent decay on the other side of the tooth. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter because we have to excavate it, clean the decay, and do the endo. So is it possible that the recurrent decay from the distal is really what caused the tooth to go non-vital? Or was it because the filling was close to the other pulp horn, from 10 years ago? I don't know. But at the end of the day, we're still going to do an endo. And that's really where this all comes into play. So SSL, why I brought that up is because SSL is a ranking factor. So that means that looking at all of these factors that go into saying, where is your page going to rank? General Dentist, Tribeca, New York, or whatever it is, all of these are factors. And Google has now said, we're going to look and see if you have an SSL certificate as part of our calculation. Now, if you don't have an SSL certificate and you've got a great page about Invisalign, and I have an SSL certificate, but I have a page that says we do dentures, veneers, crowns, endo, and Invisalign, whose Invisalign page is going to rank better? Yours, because it's about Invisalign, which is really what the user wants, that doesn't have SSL, or mine, that has SSL, but isn't as good in terms of the quality because it's about other things, including Invisalign? And the answer is, I don't know. So that's why, and nobody knows that. So that's why we tell you, and to figure that out is a waste of time, which is why I would tell you, go ahead and just do what Google says. So add the SSL certificate. I like to say that it can't hurt you to have one, but it certainly may be a problem if you don't. So what are the types of certificates? Generally speaking, so this is just an idea of what it does, but here's just a number. So don't worry about what this means, but for 128-bit key, these are the number of possible combinations to break the certificate for the math people out there. So there's a few types of certificates. I don't really want to get into that too much today, but certificates are free versus paid. You could get a certificate for free, or you could spend $10,000 on one. The ones that you spend $10,000 on are not the ones that we need for dentistry. Those are the ones where you're doing an obscene amount of e-commerce or anything like that. So if someone were to break it, which I've never seen, or not never, but it doesn't really happen, there's, a guarantee to the vendor that, we'll guarantee you up to $1 million in lost revenue if something happens. As dentists, we don't need that. So a free certificate is fine. Now, when I say a free certificate, if you know what you're doing, you can very easily get a free certificate, or you get one for $8 or $9 for the year, or maybe even, and some of them are even 12, 15, 20 bucks like that. So an SSL certificate should not be expensive. With our hosting, for example, we include the SSL certificate. There are some companies that charge 40 bucks a year, 60 bucks a year. So if you're working with your web host or with your web developer or whoever it is not unreasonable to pay between 40 and 60 bucks a year, 70, whatever it is, to have them set up the SSL certificate and, and keep it up to date for you. So I don't want you thinking that you have to go out and spend one of these $3 million certificates or, spend 10 grand, because you don't. So you should be paying probably $40 to $70, 30, whatever it is. If you have a plan now, a hosting plan, and they want to add SSL, it really shouldn't cost you more than, $4, $5, $6 a month more. Now, that being said, there are clients who have told me, or, people have told me that their company said, well, our server is too old, so we have to build you a whole new website to do SSL, and that is a crock of baloney. That's just simply not true. That to me seems like a push to build a new website. You can SSL secure anything. So that's just, food for thought. Now, this we don't need. Yeah, I mean, you could pay up to $10,000, $1,000. You don't need that. On contentdentist.com, I think the certificate that I'm using is I think it's $100 certificate. I think that's it. And the reason it costs a little more is because I have to verify my identity with it. But again, it's e-commerce, but people really don't know the difference. But that's that. So this you don't have to worry about. And then so SSL setup in general. I'm not getting into the nitty gritty because it's not what this is about. If you have a question, you can certainly ask me after. I will tell you probably to really ask someone who knows what they're doing. But I mean, I know what I'm doing, and I'll certainly share the information with you. But with your web developer, and this is now, if you look on the side, you should have in the file sharing tab, you should probably have a tab. The migration checklist is there. And basically what it says is, if you give it to your web developer, which you can, certainly to say, listen, have a certificate in place. Now you want to choose which one you want. If you look at your website, if you go on your website now in another browser, Control T or Command T on a Mac, you type in your website, you're going to see whether it's www.shorthillsdesign.com or shorthillsdesign.com. Google thinks that www and the non-www, are separate. So what you have to make sure is that in Google Search Console, and again, this is not English, download the checklist and give it to your web person. It is company agnostic. You want to make sure that you're either choosing www the whole way or non-www, right? So your website's going to be www.shorthillsdesign.com/whatever, pages, or shorthillsdesign.com/whatever. And that you verify the WW and the non-WW properties and the non-SSL and SSL. Again, this is not English. That's totally fine. Again, there's plenty of things like Prostodontis says to me that aren't English and they should be. So you download that checklist, you can give it to your web developer. But these are things that once you have SSL in place, sometimes we forget about. And also the thing that's not on here, but it's on the checklist, is mixed content. Sometimes what happens is a site will be secure, but you uploaded a picture or a certain picture, let's say, to a web page, and you hard coded it. You wrote it in there, and that doesn't update. So everything on that site has to be HTTPS. And if it's not, you're going to get a warning, and that's called a mixed content warning. Again, doesn't matter why or how. We can talk about that another time. But I just want it's on this list here, this checklist, so your web developer knows to make sure. And in analytics, just adjust it to make sure that it says HTTPS and not HTTP. So basically, get the checklist here. Here's the link. Also, again, in the sidebar, you can get that. And in my follow-up email, you're going to get that as well. Now, so yeah, and in Search Console, it's where you tell Google which site that you want. That's fine. So then real quickly, so the Content Dentist is a new service I just launched because I felt that we need to have great website content. And since Google has now said in the last year or so or two that a dentist in Tallahassee can have the same implant page as a dentist in Talladega, then and not get a penalty, then it's fine. So on the contentdentist.com, I sell content that I have written myself, and you get it in HTML format. It comes in Word format. You can put it in your website as is. You can edit it and then add it. I'd love you to edit it for yourself. Put it in there, but it's content that you can use. So a lot of people want to fill in that circle. You have a lot of content, but you just never got around to writing content for those other pages. So we've got pages there for you, like the bone grafts page. Not a lot of people have that. And so the service pages, I think, are $44. And right now, because I just launched it and I want to get feedback, I have a 50% off coupon, which I'll give you next. Blog posts are coming soon. And I have an accessibility statement that's $19.99. Every website should have an accessibility statement just to show that, hey, we're making an effort to be accessible. Even if you aren't, you will get some cover by having that statement. And so here is, take 50 is the coupon code. Take 50% off your purchase. And I'd love, and again, if you do that, I would love to hear your feedback and suggestions about what other content you would like to see. And that concludes our webinar. We are at 32 minutes, so sorry about that, but we're there. And I thank you so much for your time. And I will now open it up for, leave up my contact information. And I'll open it up for any other questions. Yeah, so there was a question about online patient registration. And again, I would not do that on your website. I would send that out, using a service that does that. And same thing with online payments. I would not accept online payments on your website. I think people are much happier going to a different site because they expect to use some kind of portal. There's another question. I would not use PayPal. That's a very good question. I would not use PayPal because PayPal has certain types of return policies where, you all know what a chargeback is when someone says, I didn't like that, undo my charge. If you do that with PayPal, a client patient can say, hey, I didn't like my denture or this filling fell out, so please reverse the charge. PayPal will reverse it. They will shoot first and ask questions later. So I would avoid them for accepting payments for your dental office. So that's all the questions, and that's it. I once again thank you all so very much for coming tonight and for dealing with our little technical hiccup in the beginning. And thank you so much, and have a wonderful evening. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Thank you again. Have a great night.